During your lifetime as a tennis player, you have a 50% chance of getting tennis elbow. Do have to ease yourself back in. You need to let your arm get used to that repeated insult that is hitting a tennis ball.
And moving away from ice and moving into kind of like warm water or hot water solution as well can help, because then it's kind of promoting like the dilation of blood vessels. Welcome back to the Getting a Grip podcast. Today it's tennis elbow time. Yeah, no, everyone hates tennis elbow. We're going to talk about why it happens and how we can manage it. So Merlin, take it away. Give us the info that we need to know.
Yep, so continuing on this health theme and trying to keep a little bit of a, knowledge input and some prevention ideas for everyone on basically all the little niggles that tennis throws up at us, right? Tennis is such an intense sport and somehow we always end up with some sort of injury. That is literally down to what I always call prehab. You call it rehab when you're recovering from something. Prehab is like preventing something from happening. Well, tennis elbow is one of those things that I think everyone in tennis has probably experienced. But I'm not going to give you that answer just yet, okay? Because now I'm going to statistically ask you, how many adults are affected by tennis elbow? That's my first question. I'm jumping straight in there with a statistical question. Yep, it's me, the scientist. How many adults are affected by tennis elbow? Your four answers are 1%, 3%, 5%, or 10%.
And this is just any adult, like doesn't matter what sport they're playing.
You've picked up the nuance of the question already. Very nice. Yes, that is indeed what the question is getting at.
Yeah, because I know people who get tennis elbow who don't play tennis. Like, I actually probably maybe almost more common than those that actually play tennis.
No. Otherwise, it would be called common elbow, not tennis elbow.
Nah, that doesn't catch on. Come on, you've got to come up with some good names for these things. 1% seems. Actually, I mean, all of them are kind of high, really. Like 1%, 1 in 100 is still high. I don't really have much to go on here, if I'm honest. 10%, that's 1 in 10, that is high. I'll go middle of the road. I'll go 5%.
Okay. You need to get a grip because the answer is 3%. Although technically the studies have found it's between 1 and 3%. However, that is, as you answered earlier, that is all adults, even the ones that don't play tennis and present themselves as having, I've got some pain in my elbow. And that is something that a lot of people can get even without playing tennis. It's all to do with the injury that you receive and where that injury is in your elbow. And we call it tennis elbow. It's actually quite a wide term for just sort of an area of your elbow experiencing pain. But interestingly, before we move on to this, obviously that answer was all for not just tennis players. Do you want to, and this isn't a proper question, but do you want to just guess what the incidence rate is for tennis players?
Okay. Wow. Let's go with... Go on. Are you going to give me a clue?
I was going to say, you said 1 in 10 was high, so you carry on.
Well, now I just want to say 10%. I was even going to go higher than that, to be honest.
Go for it.
I'll go 15%. Yeah.
Okay. 50%. 1 in 2.
Jesus.
50%. During your lifetime as a tennis player, you have a 50% chance of getting tennis elbow. And that makes sense, right? I've certainly had tennis elbow. Have you had tennis elbow in the past?
I think I had it briefly. I think it was like the serve action that I changed, and then I started feeling it from that. I don't know what kind of position I was getting in, but normally it's like if your arm's not extended, that increases your likelihood of it happening. So it's probably something to do with that. So yeah, I have had it.
Someone's trying to bring in the tips already. Yes. So, so then on this podcast so far, 100% of us have had tennis elbow.
Good sample
It would have been
size.
better if you'd said no. But yes, this is exactly. This is the point. Tennis elbow is something that affects so many tennis players. I don't really know many people who haven't had it, and especially at a level, sort of intermediate level. If you start playing loads of tennis, early on, you've not played much tennis before. I guarantee you, if you're playing like suddenly 3 or 4 times a week without easing yourself in or doing any sort of prehab, as I call it, the stuff that we're going to say later is probably helpful in you avoiding tennis elbow. Well, then your chance of getting it is very, very high because you're impacting your elbow many times. Every time you hit the ball, that impact is going through your arm. This is why we have things like shock absorbers. It's this tiny method of management, but they're not really that good. It's a tiny method of management to avoid that shock going through your arm. But anyway, instance is higher, right?
Yeah, that's crazy.
It is crazy. It is crazy. But what I want to know, here's my next question. What is tennis elbow's real name? So we keep calling it tennis elbow. You highlighted this earlier. That'd be a boring name if it was called common elbow or something like that. What is its real name? And I've got 4 answers for you here. Let's see if you get this. Tendinitis, lateral epicondylitis, radial tunnel syndrome, army hertitis.
Wait, what was the last one?
Army hertitis. Don't.
Yes, I did just do a salute.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah. You know what? This could be very embarrassing. Having done sports science and anatomy.
If you said army hertitis, then yes, it would be very embarrassing.
Oh, jeez. The lateral epicondylitis sticks out to me, but then again, I'm not sure if that's because I've just heard that term a lot for a type of injury or whether it's this specific injury. Oh, anatomy is failing me. Tendinitis, it is, in a way, tendinitis, I guess. But that seems kind of generic. What was the third one?
Radial tunnel syndrome.
I feel that's more of a, honestly, this is embarrassing. I'm just going to, the less I say, the better. Let's go with lateral epicondylitis. I don't know whether I'm saying that for the right reasons, but I've definitely heard that a lot. But I don't know if it's
well done. That is the correct answer. That is the correct answer. Well done. However, tendinitis is also technically correct because most of the time when you get tennis elbow, it is a form of tendinitis. But as you correctly said, tendinitis is a more general term associated with anything that affects the tendons and how they get inflamed or damaged. But yes, lateral epicondylitis is the official name for tennis elbow. Hence why it's called tennis elbow and not that, because who remembers that? I can barely say it, and I'm a scientist. So this is why we need Latin classes in school again. But regardless, lateral epicondylitis, like I say, it has a fancy name. Technically, it's not really fit for purpose anymore because it sort of refers to general inflammation in that region of the elbow, which, again, that's sort of how we define tennis elbow, but sometimes it can be more nuanced than that. Interestingly, radial tunnel syndrome is something much, much worse. And radial tunnel syndrome is where the radial nerve, which is one of the main nerves that goes down your arm, it becomes very inflamed around the nerve and basically traps the nerve. So, a lot of people have had like trapped nerves in their back and stuff like that. This is like having tennis elbow, but it goes up and down your arm regularly. So you don't quite know where it is in your arm. So sometimes you might start and you go, oh, I've got tennis elbow. And then suddenly it's in your bicep and then suddenly it's near your wrist and stuff like that. So I've had that and that's horrible. Yeah, don't get that. That happens a lot when you do a lot of fine sort of motor work. For example, like very menial labor with your hands. Say you're a piano player for your profession or a piano teacher and you're also a tennis player. That will probably cause something like radial tunnel syndrome because you're constantly using fine motor skills in your forearm. So it can cause that problem. Anyway, we're on tennis elbow today. We're on tennis elbow. So let's carry on with that one. Okay, so the next question. So now we know its real name and the incidents in which it occurs. This is all about empowering you guys with information, right? So if you know more about it, then you're going to understand better about how to prevent it. You know, logically, we can understand these things without necessarily being told the specifics, but we will anyway at the end. Anyway, so the third question is, how long does tennis elbow last? And this is a sort of typical answer. It's not something that's been informed by research necessarily. It's a rough answer. But anyway, in months, got 4 answers. 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months. Ugh, there was too many THs there.
Sorry, 1, 3, 6, or 12, was it?
1, 3, 6, or 12 months.
Well, I didn't have a very severe form of it then. I think mine only lasted like a few weeks. I'm torn between the first two. I don't know, just from anecdotal evidence from people I've spoken to and how long they generally kind of suffer with it. Maybe it's too short though. You know, I'll go with 3. I'll go with 3 months.
Okay, so you need to get a grip. Because the answers are between 6 and 12 months. Now, I'm going to say what the answer, why the answer is this. So, pain may go away quite quickly, perhaps in 6 to 12 weeks. Some of us think of it as being a matter of weeks. It doesn't last too long. That's why 1 and 3 months, they sounded probably more reasonable. The pain may go away in that time, but the underlying issue, sort of that inflammation and that problem within your elbow causing tennis elbow, that may take longer to heal. And this is where it gets really important. People say, oh, I've had tennis elbow a couple months ago and it's come back because I'm playing a lot again. I got the pain. Oh, it's come back. Oh, I stopped again and it's come back again. Well, that's because it never really went. It was only the pain that went. So it's important to remember that some of these things do take a long time to heal. And I would say when I had radial tunnel syndrome, for example, I'm probably only now okay, and it happened over a year ago. So a lot of these things do take a very, very long time to heal. Hence why it's so important to prevent them.
Yeah, that's a good point. We only pay attention to it when we actually feel something, right? When we feel the pain, but that inflammation can still be there. And again, then if you come back thinking that it's gone away, then I'm guessing that can make it last even longer than originally, right? Like if you come back and then injure again, it may take an even longer time for it to fully heal. So it's kind of it's playing with fire a little bit there, but it is very frustrating, right? If it goes on for months, you're like, oh, just want to kind of get back and hit a ball or something. Come on, like let me have some fun. Like it can be very frustrating. So I can understand why it would be quite common for people to come back and experience recurrences. There you go. Very frustrating.
Fortunately, the advice among doctors, when people ask, oh, should I carry on playing tennis when you've got tennis elbow? Fortunately, a lot of doctors will say, and they're quite right to, that once the pain has gone, you can play tennis again. However, it's how often you play tennis. So, for example, if you were playing 4 or 5 times a week, you're loving your tennis. That's great. We love that here. You're playing 4 or 5 times a week, and suddenly you go back to playing 4 or 5 times a week after having a couple of months off. I suggest that that's probably not the best way to approach it. You do have to ease yourself back in. You need to let your arm get used to that repeated insult that is hitting a tennis ball. And you also probably need to make sure, obviously, that you're getting the right recovery in afterwards. So that period after you have an injury, that recovery time, post-pain as well, it's so important in preventing it happening again in the future. But like I say, these are things that we will be able to cover for you towards towards the end of this episode. Yes, we do like to keep you all hanging on. A little bit of clickbait, as it were. Anyway, question number 4 of 6 today. There are going to be 6, yes, because I love an extra question here and there. I want to know, why does tennis elbow take so long to heal? And you've got 4 answers here. Why does tennis elbow take so long to heal? Answer number 1, the damage is really, really severe. Answer number 2, people can never truly rest their arm properly. Answer number 3, poor blood flow to the tendons and elbow area. And answer number 4, the nerves get damaged. So why does tennis elbow take so long to heal?
I don't think it's the last one. I mean, it's kind of true, I suppose. You can never like fully rest your arm, but then again, like if you think of how we've like evolved and how humans live, like your body, I guess our bodies would have adapted to that anyway. In a way, like you can still recover whilst using things. So I feel like that kind of rules that out a little bit. What were the first? What was the first option? The first couple options.
The damage is really, really severe.
That's just like a very vague
people can't
statement.
rest their arm properly, and poor blood flow to the tendon and elbow area.
And the question was, why does it last so long?
Why does tennis elbow take so long to heal?
Yeah, I'll go with the poor blood flow one. I don't know if that's right. I feel
Correct.
Yeah, because ligaments
Correct.
have less blood flow to them.
Yeah, but it's the same with tendons. So blood flow is the thing that you need to an area in order to promote healing. Basically, people always used to talk in hundreds of years past about blood being magical and how it can heal people and all that sort of stuff, and like transfusing blood from healthy people to sick people might cure people. Obviously that was a bit of rubbish. However, one thing that we know, it does sound a bit vampire-y, but one thing we know for absolute certain is if you have adequate blood flow to a region, things tend to heal faster. And this is why tennis elbow lasts so long, because you don't have that adequate blood flow in order to heal the region quickly. It doesn't clear away inflammation very quickly. It keeps things inflamed, and a lot of what we're going to call the bad stuff that is created from that injury and from that damage, it lingers for longer in that area, and hence sometimes you get that pain for longer. So this is why tennis elbow lasts so long. It's simply because there isn't enough blood reaching the area.
There you go. Yeah, it's just, like you said, for any kind of tendon or ligament kind of injury, it's the same blimmin' problem. Not enough blood flow. So yeah, that's just adds to the frustration, right? Like if you have like a muscular injury, often you can come back within, well, maybe like a month or 2, like fully healed. But just this darn elbow won't heal itself.
Exactly that. So now moving on to basically the solutions to tennis elbow. So we know all about it now. We know what causes it, why it takes so long to heal, etc. My question to you, question number 5, is how can you heal tennis elbow? And I've got 4 answers for you here. Answer number 1, rice. Answer number 2, put your arm in a brace. Answer number 3, play through the pain. And answer number 4, anti-inflammatory pills.
Oh, I like that third one. Let's play through the pain. Come on. When you said rice, I'm assuming you didn't literally mean actual rice. You meant the method rice.
Good, very good. I was hoping that your sports science knowledge would come in handy here. Yes, rice doesn't actually refer to the food rice.
Although
it is an acronym for rest, ice, compression, and elevation.
Although, like black rice has got a lot of antioxidants in it. I'm sure that will help recovery.
Oh, go away. Go away. Just stop.
I'll go with the method rice.
The method rice. Exactly that. That is correct. Yeah. So there's no putting it past you. You were a strength and conditioning coach, or you are a strength and conditioning coach, I should say. Rice is the method. So resting tennis elbow, that is one of the best ways, obviously. But what we said earlier is that people can't rest their arms properly. Okay, so that answer wasn't really correct for why it lasts so long, but it's also kind of true in the sense that you can't really rest your arm properly. But the advice is also that you shouldn't fully rest your arm. For example, you wouldn't put it in a brace because you still want to maintain the dynamic movement from your elbow. And you still want to keep the tendons supple so that when you do come back to play tennis, you're not going to cause a proper injury, such as a tear, for example, in your tendons. So putting your arm in a brace is a horribly, horribly wrong answer. So I really hope no one picked that one, because that's good for setting bones, but something that you want to stay elastic, like a tendon, very important that you keep the arm moving throughout the recovery. The ice helps reduce the swelling and the inflammation. So this is why, if you have tennis elbow and you're playing a tournament or you're playing the next day and you really, really do want to play, you can't avoid it. You've got that ache in your elbow. If you ice your elbow in the evening, just half an hour to an hour or something like that with a pack of peas from the freezer, it will make the difference. It really will, because it will bring down that swelling and that inflammation and reduce the pain for you as well. Compression. So a lot of people wear these sort of compressive, elasticated braces. It's almost like a sock for your arm, and to sort of reduce the pain that you get from tennis elbow, and also to help improve the strength of the elbow, for example. This is okay. Advice is sort of going away from this now, in the idea that just in the same way that you don't want to, give yourself a brace and stop your elbow from moving at all when you recover, you don't really want to rely on something else for the strength of your elbow. So say some of the elastication is coming from that support. You don't want that support to be there for too long. So maybe use it if you're playing whilst having tennis elbow, but don't have it on all the time. Please don't have it on all the time, because it's likely not to cause a long-term benefit. It's just a short-term one in that way.
Yeah.
And then elevation, well, yeah, if you keep it raised, then sometimes that helps with the recovery. But again, that's a harder thing to do. Hi, lady.
I'm kind of contending with this now, even with the ankle injury that I have. The kind of the balance between resting it and then actually using it, and this kind of, you're always trying to strike that balance between the two. I think the point about the support is, for when you're actually playing, that's a good one as well, because that's also something I'm using with my ankle, is having that there to support you while you're like putting a bit of extra strain on it. That kind of just even just mentally kind of helps as well. But I think that kind of just gives you a bit more stability there, and then over time you can kind of reduce that or loosen it, and then eventually just you don't have to use it. But you definitely still need to be using your arm. So I mean, you kind of have to anyway. So I think it's kind of difficult to not use it. So that's a benefit. At least we're typing every day. We're doing we're kind of moving it around all day. So that's good. I think there's also some evidence that after a period of time, that in moving away from ice and moving into kind of like warm water or hot water solution as well can help, because then it's kind of promoting like the dilation of blood vessels, and that can help with blood flow as well. So things to consider.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. There's a time and a place for everything. So for example, that warmer water idea, that's a very good idea, especially as part of the recovery. Potentially, you might have a day where you played a lot of tennis. You might use the ice the night before to reduce the inflammation, and you're playing the next day. But then if you've got a few days off, then absolutely use the warm water. Try and get the blood flow into that arm as much as possible with the dilation that you will get of blood vessels, so they'll expand in response to that heat. That's absolutely helpful. I couldn't agree more that that's probably a good approach in helping you effectively reduce and heal your tennis elbow. All great ideas. One thing I did want to mention, anti-inflammatory pills. They are not the wrong answer, but they are not something that will help it heal. All they will do is reduce the pain in the moment. And they're also something that you really don't want to be using regularly. There's something that you will use, say, once in a day, or you might use it 2 days running, but Going beyond 2 or 3 days running with an anti-inflammatory pill or any sort of painkiller, for example, it's quite bad for your health, especially gut health. We know this for a fact now. This is very well researched. So you want to avoid that wherever possible. But if you're playing and the tennis elbow niggles you after the first set and you've got another set to go to, really, really destroy this person that you're trying to beat, then okay, you might be able to use it then. But be careful, if you're already seeing a doctor, for example, about your tennis elbow, if you have sought proper medical advice, make sure that you listen to what they are saying. If they say it's not a good idea, then I would listen to them. Anyhow, question number 6. This is the final one. I'm all about the prevention. I love the prehab. I've not had tennis elbow in a very long time. Obviously, I had that radial tunnel syndrome thing, but that was because of my work and my tennis and doing way too much. However, how can you prevent tennis elbow is my next question. So I've got 4 answers for you. Strengthening your arm with weights and cables. Be smart with recovery between tennis sessions. Get coaching to improve your technique. Make sure your racket weight and the strings that you use are right for you. So there's your 4 answers. Which do you think can help you prevent tennis elbow?
All of them.
Bang on. Yeah, absolutely right. They are all pretty much, they're the 4 that you want to rely on in order to prevent getting tennis elbow. So, for example, when I've had tennis elbow in the past, during the rehab stage and the prehab stage, in order to avoid it in the future, one of the best things you can do is get a very, very low weight sort of thing and do some bicep curls. That's great. That strengthens that whole elbow area, the muscles around it. That will strengthen the tendons, get used to being elastic, and then that will also prevent inflammation in that area. And you can do it with cables as well if you want to make it more of a dynamic movement or more similar to a tennis shot, for example, but making sure you do it slowly. It's not about trying to hit the ball really fast in the same way. You want to make sure that you're doing a slow movement and put the load, that weight, through your arm, because if it's used to that weight, swinging a tennis racket and hitting a tennis ball is a relatively small weight relative to the weights that you could do it within in the gym, for example. But I'll stress again, low weights. Am I right, Ben?
I think you'll be getting some interesting looks if you're shadowing your tennis shots on the cable machine at the gym.
yeah, you might do, but still, it's a good idea. Not necessarily. I wouldn't worry about doing it as tennis shots. Just do it like a bicep curl. Just strengthen your arm. Literally do the simple movements that you see as most basic gym users will do. That will help strengthen your arm. Being smart with recovery. Okay, well that's something we can understand quite easily. If you've got the pain, you've got rice, that's great. The warm water as well to help sort of increase the blood flow, for example. But I think more than anything, it's like I'm going to play 3 days in a row and then not play for 4 days. Maybe space it apart a bit. Maybe give yourself a day on, a day off, a day on, a day off. That's probably a little bit smarter. You see all of these tournaments, for example, Grand Slams, they play one match and then they have a day's break. Well, break. They might hit, they might warm up or whatever. If it doesn't rain, exactly. This is why tennis players hate rain delays, because that disrupts their natural recovery routine. And for example, after a big week of playing tennis, maybe a tournament where they're playing every day, you have shorter matches. So if you want to play every day, play for less time each day. If you want to play, less regularly, then you can play for more time during those less regular slots. So it's all about that sort of management. That can definitely help. Making sure your racket weight and strings are right for you. Now, this is a key one. You don't need to worry about it too much if you're not playing loads. If you're playing loads, it's quite important. If your racket is too heavy, then you're probably putting too much impact through your arm, and it may also change your technique. So you want to make sure that the racket weight is correct for you. If you ask any coach you see, is my racket weight correct for me? Or you just ask them that question. They're not going to charge you for it. They will answer that question. If they don't answer that question, let us know. We'll expose them. No, I'm joking. But still, very important. You got to keep the weight of your racket right for you, because every time you swing that racket, it's like lifting that weight. So say your racket's 300 grams and you hit, I don't know, 500 shots in a tennis session. You've swung 300 grams 500 times. If you do the maths, you realize how much you've lifted through your arm. Hence why you want to limit that as much as you can. That doesn't mean have the lightest racket possible, but not too heavy definitely helps.
Yeah.
And strings. Strings are really important as well. If you have really thick strings, then the impact is going to be greater. If you have thinner strings, yeah, okay, they might break sooner, but it depends what level of tennis player you are. If you're like a pro tennis player and you have really thin strings, okay, yeah, they're going to break after about an hour. But if you're not playing as regularly or you don't hit the ball as hard as a pro does, they'll last quite a while anyway, so I wouldn't worry.
Yeah, the racket, yeah, both those things are really important. I noticed even when I reduced my racket weight by about 10 grams, like this is for someone who plays regularly, when I reduced it by even just 10 grams, like I noticed the less frequent occurrence of like little kind of, even just like low grade kind of niggles or whatever, not even proper tennis elbow. And even my shots, actually, like the amount of spin I could put on the ball, and I felt like I had more control with a lighter racket. And yeah, I think the heavier racket was just kind of limiting me with my technique as well as the actual, risk of injury that happened. And the strings, yeah, that's a good point as well. Because obviously when you have thinner strings, there's like a little bit more give there. Obviously, like you said, they're going to most probably break a bit sooner. But, do you want your strings to break sooner but not get injured, or you want to get injured and have your strings break a little bit more regularly? I think one thing is slightly easier to put up with than the other one, especially given how long we said
couldn't agree more.
Like the injury can take to heal. So just little things there.
Yeah. And I think finally, when we gave the answer, get coaching to improve your technique. Well, that depends. So it depends on how good your technique is. So really, it's your forehand and your serve that are the two shots that really might require this. Forehand in particular, because it's the shot you hit most frequently. If your forehand is too close to you, for example, then that will encourage tennis elbow. What did you say earlier, Ben, that helps avoid tennis elbow with the way you hold your tennis racket in your arm?
Yeah, it was just being extended at the point of contact, because you'll notice, even if you not even in terms of like how the pain you feel, but if you just hold your racket out with a slightly bent arm and you get someone to like push against the racket and then compare that to when you have your arm straight, the difference in resistance that is there is pretty notable. And that's the big difference that's happening when you actually hit the ball. And the strain that's then going to be transferred through your elbow rather than through basically the whole lever, the whole arm, is pretty significant. So stay away from that ball for your own sake. Come on.
Yep, absolutely right. And what Ben said there is something that you might not even need a coach to know that. But if you can go away and practice trying to be a little bit more extended, not too extended, you don't want to be like trying to reach every time, but just trying to be relaxed and keeping that arm a little bit straighter as you make contact with the ball, as you hit the ball, it will definitely help. And those are all the main ways that you can really, really prevent tennis elbow. And this is why a lot of pros don't really get it, because they do all the right things to avoid it. But the incidence is so high because there are so many factors that can influence it.
Yeah, get on those bicep curls in the gym. Come on. But like at least then you can kind of work by process of elimination as well. So if you're doing 2 or 3 of those things and you're still maybe having issues, then you can look at the next thing. You can sort of eliminate bit by bit, and then from there work out what exactly is causing it. And then hopefully you don't have that issue ever again. That's the ideal scenario.
Well, this is the thing as a tennis player as well. If you go to a doctor and say, I've got tennis elbow, they're going to suggest the most basic things in order for you to recover, but they're not going to know nearly as well as you are yourself how to diagnose the problem and actually get a solution. So this is ideally, this is a fun scenario where tennis coaches and the individual playing tennis are more medically qualified in the field of tennis elbow than a doctor might be, for example. So it's important to remember that. You can still seek medical advice. It's still important to do that. But you are best placed to create your own advice, provided you have all the information.
Yeah, or even better if your doctor plays tennis. Maybe ask them next time you
even better. Even better.
starts checking out the frame, the strings, all the technical details.
Imagine turning up to your GP appointment with your tennis racket. That'd be dull.
I don't think you'd be letting like, well, what are you doing with that?
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So there you go. Those are a few, prevention strategies and some ways to manage it. Let us know kind of what things you've used, what's worked for you, and what maybe you're going to try from listening to this. We'd be interested to know, see what works for people out there. And if you've enjoyed it, give us a follow on the different podcast platforms, and then on YouTube, like it, share it, and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next one.